Welcome to Talking History, a series of talks from the Farnham U3A World History, Ancient, Medieval and Modern group. Please note, the views expressed in this talk are representative of the views held at the time of the material being discussed. They do not necessarily represent the views of the speaker. The Farnham U3A World History, Ancient, Medieval and Modern group, nor the team at the Mr. T podcast studio. The Burning House Debate 2024. The idea behind these debates is that there are a number of famous people from history staying in our burning house. Only one can be saved. Who should be chosen? Michael A'Bear tells us why Xerxes the Great should be the person to be saved. And if you've listened to the recently published talk on Alexander the Great, you may be interested to hear a bit more about Xerxes.
This story goes back a long way. Something over half a century ago, as a 21-year-old young lad, I caught a bus from Victoria Coach Station to India. Now, I know it sounds far-fetched, but that is absolutely true. Travelling through that part of Asia, I came across Darius and Xerxes innumerable times and felt that I'd really got to know them, visiting places like Persepolis and all manner of other places. And believe me, there were more adventures on that trip than you could shake a stick at. So I thought I'd share Xerxes with you today. Now, Xerxes the Great, as he was known, of Persia, he was the son of Darius I, the king emperor of Persia, whose empire stretched an enormous distance from the Indus Valley in India in the east, all the way to the Balkans in the west, and also included Egypt and the Black Sea area. When Darius died in 486 BCE, our hero Xerxes came to the throne. He was about 35 years old. Like his father, Xerxes was raised as a Zoroastrian, but he was very tolerant of other religions. He permitted his subjects to follow whatever religions they wished. Apart from this religious tolerance, he established standardised weights and measures, ran a very successful postal service, developed the concept of money and banking, and built innumerable roads. On his succession to the throne, he became known as the King of Kings, the King of Persia, King of Babylon, Pharaoh of Egypt, and King of Countries. He was an absolute monarch, and he was an absolute terror as well. He led by fear and had a well-organised army of over 2 million men. I really ought to have got you all to prostrate yourselves, lying on your stomachs, because you weren't allowed to meet the emperor without doing that. But if you're like me, you wouldn't get up again. So he had his army of over 2 million men and a substantial navy as well. He'd been raised by eunuchs from the age of 7, then started military training, which was quite normal in those days, at the age of 14, particularly specialising in archery and javelin throwing. His father, Darius, had failed to subjugate the city of Athens and some of the other Greek city-states, and Xerxes swore that he would do it for his late father. And he set about doing this. He built a bridge across the Hellespont, the Dardanelles as we'd call it, of ships which were lashed together. But a big storm came along and destroyed it. So what did he do? He just turned around and rebuilt it all. And he got his huge army across it. Nobody knows how many men. Despite severe losses of his soldiers, he won the Battle of Thermopylae, beating the Athenians and Spartans, who put up a jolly good fight. He then attacked and burned Athens, but the population had been evacuated to a little island of Salamis just outside Athens, and so they were saved. The Greeks then won the Battle of Marathon. There was the Sea Battle of Salamis, which was sort of a score draw in favour of the Athenians, is the only way you can put it. And finally the Battle of Plataea. Most of his soldiers escaped with him back across the ship bridge. He had trouble in Egypt and Babylon, so he crushed the revolts in both and put family members in to rule there. He started building his famous palace at Persepolis, wonderful place in the middle of nowhere. Although he didn't actually live there, that was a ceremonial palace. He lived in Babylon. He ended up being assassinated by one of his political advisors in 465 BCE. Why on earth did I choose him as the survivor of our fire? Well, the answer is very simple. Because he was such a firm and strong leader that I think that he would have been one of the few people who could sort out the troubles of the world today. He'd take no nonsense from our politicians. He'd certainly sort out the post office. He'd set up a postal system, remember? As for potholes, he'd certainly get them cleared up. He built roads. Climate change, I think he did that in a different way by just rebuilding his bridge in a different way. The troubles in the Middle East, he cleared them up in no time at all. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the reasons why I recommend that we save Xerxes, the King Emperor. Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast has been produced by the Mr. T Podcast Studio in association with the Farnham U3A World History, Ancient, Medieval and Modern Group. Thank you very much for listening to this talk.